When you're about to die, does your life really flash before your eyes? Almost everyone has heard that it does. A car sliding sideways on ice, a wave pulling someone under, a fall that lasts less than a second, and in that instant, complete strangers who have never met report the exact same impossible thing. Their entire life played back in front of them. Childhood bedrooms, faces they hadn't thought about in 30 years, tiny forgotten moments, all of it in the time it takes to blink. So is it true? For most of history, we filed it under myth, a nice story people tell afterward to make sense of nearly dying. But here's the disturbing part. It's real. It has now been recorded. And what your brain is actually doing in those final seconds is far stranger and far more deliberate than anyone expected. Let's start with the moment everything changed, because until very recently, this was impossible to study. To catch what the brain does as it dies, you would need someone wired up to record their brain activity at the exact instant their heart stopped, which is not something you can ever plan. But in 2022, it happened by accident. A team led by neurosurgeon Ajmal Zemar was monitoring an 87-year-old patient with an EEG cap trying to detect seizures. And while the machine was still running, the patient had a heart attack and died. For the first time in history, we had a continuous recording of a human brain in the 30 seconds before and the 30 seconds after the heart stopped. Nobody had ever seen this before. And what the recording showed was not the flat, fading silence you might expect. In the moments around death, the brain did the opposite of shutting down quietly. It lit up. Specifically, there was a surge in something called gamma oscillations, a very particular high-frequency pattern of brain activity. And here is why that single detail stopped researchers cold. Gamma waves are not random noise. They are the signature your brain produces during one specific activity, memory recall, the same pattern that fires when you deliberately reach back and retrieve a memory, when you dream, when you concentrate. The dying brain wasn't powering off. It looked on the readout like it was remembering. Now, be honest about what this is. It's one recording, from one brain, in one moment, an elderly patient whose brain was already injured, dying by accident while a machine happened to be running. We can't ever set this experiment up on purpose, so this is not proof of what happens inside every dying mind, but it's the first hard evidence we have ever had from the inside of the thing millions of people have described from the outside, and it points somewhere unmistakable. So the cliché has a mechanism now. But to understand why the brain would do this, we have to go back to something we covered before. The strange truth that your brain doesn't measure time with a clock, it measures time with memory. And it records that memory fastest when you are flooded with something new or something frightening. Neuroscientist David Eagleman proved this by dropping terrified volunteers into freefall and discovering that their brains laid down an unusually dense flood of memory during the fall. The event was tiny. The memory of it was enormous. Now take that same mechanism and push it to the absolute edge. A moment of genuine, mortal danger is the single most intense signal your brain can receive. And it responds the only way it knows how, by recording at a resolution and a speed it never normally reaches. But it isn't just recording more. It's recording differently. Because when people describe the life review, they almost never describe it as a movie playing in order, start to finish. They describe it as something much weirder, panoramic, simultaneous, all at once. People say they experienced their whole life not as a sequence but as a single instantaneous thing. Every moment somehow present together, without time passing between them. Which is exactly what you'd expect if the brain, in a state of total emergency, briefly dropped the normal rules that keep memories filed in neat chronological order and simply threw the entire archive open at the same time. And that raises the real question, not how the brain does this, but why. Why, in the most dangerous moment of your existence, the moment you most need to focus on escaping, would your brain waste its final energy replaying your childhood? It seems like the worst possible time to get sentimental, and the leading answer is chilling in how practical it is. The flashback may not be sentimental at all. It may be a search. Think about what your brain is facing, a threat it may have no answer to. death arriving in a second, with no obvious escape. So the brain does the one thing it has always done when confronted with a problem. It ransacks its own past for a solution. It tears through every experience you've ever had at impossible speed, looking for a single match. Have I survived anything like this before? Is there anything in here, any memory, any lesson, any moment that tells me what to do right now? The life flashing before your eyes may simply be what it feels like from the inside when your brain queries its entire database of experience at once, hunting for a way to keep you alive. It isn't saying goodbye, it's looking for an exit, and underneath all of that sits the raw physical layer, the machinery itself breaking down in a very specific order. As the heart stops, the brain is suddenly starved of oxygen. But it doesn't fail all at once. Different regions shut down at different rates, and the areas that store your autobiographical memories deep in the temporal lobe are among the parts that stay active and even surge as the system destabilizes. Some researchers think the oxygen-starved, overfiring brain floods these memory regions with activity, releasing a cascade of stored experience as the normal brakes come off. The result is the same from every angle you look at it. The dying brain turns inward, toward memory, and turns the volume all the way up. So which is the real explanation? The gamma surge, the emergency recording, the panoramic search, the oxygen-starved temporal lobe firing? And the honest answer is the same one we keep arriving at. They aren't competing. They're describing the same event from different windows. The brain, pushed to its absolute limit, does one unified thing. It dives into everything you have ever stored and lights it up at once. Whether you call that a memory dump, a survival search, or a final recall, it is all your brain reaching in its last conscious moment for the record of your life. But here's the part almost nobody stops to think about. If the flashback is your brain replaying the memories it saved, then it can only play back what you actually recorded. And your brain, as we've seen, does not record everything. It records novelty. It records firsts. It records the moments you were fully present, when something new or strange or overwhelming forced it out of autopilot and made it pay attention. The endless summers of childhood, the day everything changed, the people who rewrote how you thought, those are written in high resolution, and those are what surge back. But the 1,000 identical commutes, the years that dissolved into routine, the weeks your brain never bothered to save because nothing in them was new, those don't flash before your eyes at all. They were never really written down, which means the life that plays back in your final moment is not your whole life. It's the part of your life you were awake for. So think about what that quietly tells you. The highlight reel your brain will one day assemble in a fraction of a second is not decided at the end. It's being written right now, today, by what you choose to notice. Every genuinely new thing you do, every time you step off autopilot and let a moment actually land, you are adding a frame to the reel that will one day play back. And every day you sleepwalk through on repeat, you are handing your brain nothing to save. The person who fills their years with the unfamiliar and the person who lives the same day 1,000 times will both, at the very end, watch their life flash before their eyes. One of them will just have far more of a life there to watch. We started with a car on the ice and a wave pulling someone under, and the strange fact that the brain, in the face of death, chooses to remember. But it isn't really strange at all. Remembering is the last thing your brain does because remembering is the thing it was doing your entire life, deciding moment by moment what was worth keeping. That endless childhood summer felt eternal because you saved every second of it, and it will be there, waiting in the flash. The clock on the wall never cared how you spent your time, but your brain kept a record of all of it, or rather, all of it you were paying attention to. So the only question that really matters is the same one it always was. When it finally plays back, what will actually be there? You're deciding right now.